Welcome to the You Can Man podcast, episode 15. I'm Josh.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dave.
And on this week's episode, Smarter Than Water.
All right, guys, welcome back. Josh, you just got back in town for your big Yellowstone trip, yes?
I did. It was a nice...
How many bears did you see?
We saw 0 bears for 6 days and then saw 8 on our last day.
Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah, weirdest thing.
Did you said, I think you told us that you were taking bear spray. Is that the kind of thing
Yes.
that you like 1990 clip to your belt? You know how you used to carry really?
Yeah, because you want to have it if you need it.
Do you have a picture with you with bear spray?
No,
clipped
it's
to your
cooler
belt?
than it looks on my backpack. I just wore it like up on the strap, kind of like a cop would wear a flashlight or something.
Okay.
And everybody's got bear spray. Some people have bear bells.
A bear bell? What's a bear bell?
It's a jingle bell that just jingles
While the bear is killing you, you ring this bell?
No, you walk around with it. The idea is to not ever even encounter a bear.
Yeah, so bear hears the bell and he's like, I'm not.
Naturally, bears prefer to be away from people. They don't like seek people out. And I think like 3 people have died in 100 years or something at the park. So it never happens. You're much more likely to die in a car accident in the park.
Geez, somebody went to Yellowstone. Now he's an expert on bears.
So anyway, didn't get attacked by a bear. Saw a bunch of bears the last day from the vehicle, which was fine with me.
Cool.
There were 2 bears. We saw bison everywhere. And bison are huge. They're like bigger than cows. There was a grizzly bear. I thought it was a bison at first. It was super, super big. And I didn't even know if I saw the right thing. But a dude from South Dakota said there was like a 400 or 500 pound bear.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Very cool.
No deaths. Hiked a mountain.
Yeah,
Good time with the wife. Done.
Awesome.
Yeah, Josh sent us a picture of him on top of this mountain and then did an arrow to where his car was. I guess you could see where the car was.
Yeah,
you couldn't see it.
I could.
There's like a speck.
Yeah, it was a white speck. It was a Dodge Ram pickup. It was a good mountain. It was a good size
That's
mountain.
what you got as a rental?
Yeah. I
Nice.
needed it.
This
too.
is Montana.
Yeah,
Come
we
on.
stayed on a ranch, and I mean, it was like 5 miles through this canyon to get to the ranch. So, yeah, you need it.
Was it like that scene? You guys probably have never seen the movie The Mexican, but Brad Pitt goes into the rental car place in Mexico, and they're like, "Oh, we have a Dodge Stratus for you. It's brand new." And he's like, "Do you have anything, a little more authentic?" Is that what you said to them when they were like,
No.
Here's your Chrysler Sebring.
I did it online, so they just had the pickup.
Okay.
ready, and I grabbed it. So,
Nice.
Yep, good trip. It was fun.
Dave, what about you?
Not a lot going on. I'm feeling pretty you can't man today because I've been fighting. I don't know if I've talked about my dryer on this podcast before. I think I have, but I recently bought a new one because my last one had a lot of trouble with it. I literally took it fully apart, I think 4 times to fix it. So when it was going to be the 5th time, I was like, nope. So I bought a new dryer. And man, just dealing with that thing. We put it in like a month ago, and it wasn't working well. And so I was like,
The new one.
the new one. It wasn't drying clothes fully. And I was like, you know what? I'll bet it's because I didn't fully do the job when I vented it, right? And so I look behind the dryer, and there's like, 3 180-degree bends in the
There you go.
in the dryer.
man.
In the hose. I was like, yeah.
You need a straight shot.
So I've been fighting with that all day, and it's a pretty simple thing to do, right? I mean, like,
I should show you my setup.
well, my setup is primo now. But it's a huge headache just to deal with it, and I'm sick of it right now.
I ran mine back up into the wall cavity.
Nice.
So there's these special fittings that you can get to do that. And then that way you can
It's recessed.
Yeah, so
Yep.
you can put the dryer pretty much all the way
pretty
back
slick.
to the wall.
I did that for mine too.
Yep. I mean, you save a good 6, 7, maybe 8, even 8 inches because you don't have to make that turn outside this side of the wall, right? You can shove it into the wall cavity to do that.
I'm going to invite you over because I think I got a belt going on my dryer, so I need some expert hands.
I could take it apart and fix it for you. I'm good at it.
Hired. What about you, Tim?
Well, this past week, I went on a run. You guys inspired me.
With your own legs?
With my own legs.
Okay.
First time, I think, probably in literally 10 to 12 years. I don't really know.
Congratulations.
You can, man.
That's right.
So, didn't have proper running shoes and basically took me a week before I could walk right because my feet just get completely demolished.
Hey, I was going to mention, when you hit, I don't know, I think it's 34 and a half, your body, at least mine, things don't do the same. Like the recovery time, astronomically worse.
Yeah, I used to eat
age.
a full package of Oreos in a night, and I could wake up and run 6 miles the next day. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I literally did that, and I could do it without an issue. And now that does not happen. Like, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But good on you, man, for making it happen.
I'm gonna stick with it. I think I'm gonna go to. My wife is a big runner, and so she suggested I go to this running store, shoe store
local,
near us, and they'll take a look at your feet and say you need this type of shoes or something like that. But man, my feet were just torn up. But I ran 1.67 miles nonstop before I walked. Now, while I was out on the run. We ran into a mutual friend of ours, older guy, Dave, and
he rides bikes.
Yeah, he was biking, and it was weird because it's been the second time because we were out as families together, me and Josh's family, and we ran into him on a different trail. This guy, how old is Dave?
I'm not going to say. He's late 50s, he's early 60s.
Yeah, something. But this guy,
Dave,
I don't know.
If you're only like 49, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if he does it maybe every other week or maybe even once a month. I'm not really sure. But he bikes an insane distance. He was like, yeah, I've been going since like 12:30 today. I'm like, it'll be about a 40-mile, bike ride today. And he's telling me all the places he went. Insane.
Yeah.
It keeps you young. I mean, it's low impact, keeps your heart healthy.
Yeah.
Makes you
biking
happy.
is good.
Yeah.
So good
cool.
job. Good job for running because it's not easy, especially summer in Georgia. Great time to start running.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I actually stick with it, which I hope to, as soon as I can get.
That's not a good sign. You're saying
that. I didn't hate it. I actually liked it. I went in the heat of the day. I love the heat. Yeah. I was like, yes.
You just got to make it part of your schedule. You're like, at least say 2 times a week I'm going to run, and like that's just what you do, and you just build it in.
Yeah,
that's my advice.
Got to.
Well, we'll see, but I'll keep you guys posted on that.
Oh, we'll stay on you about it.
All right. So the topic at hand today, you might be thinking, what in the world are these guys talking about smarter than water? So we're going to talk about keeping water out of your house. Okay. So before we begin, though, I did have a quick little story that relates back to our new house, no house series. Okay. And it has to do with water, but it's inside the house.
Throwback.
Okay. Yesterday, I was helping a really good friend of mine, Mike, renovate the house that they just bought. New house. Now he's owned a house before. He's actually owned two other houses before, and he's a smart guy. He knows his stuff. We were taking out a non-load bearing wall and then ripping up subfloor and a bunch of stuff. Anyways, so we had to take out his dishwasher to take out this layer of subfloor. So he had to disconnect the dishwasher line. I still don't know what in the world he did to make this happen, but somehow the valve came off or something, and water is just gushing everywhere, like tons of full pressure water. At first, I was like, "That's a good amount of water." I thought that was just like the residual,
right? It'll taper off,
but no, it was full blast. And I'm like, dude, where's your water cutoff? Where's your water cutoff?
It's a new house. I don't know.
And he didn't know.
Oh.
He's like, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to out at the street. And I'm like,
you got that tool?
Well, yeah, right. So I'm like, I'll figure it out. And he's literally having to hold his thumb
like an artery just
under, and he's shoved underneath the kitchen sink, right? And so I'm down in his basement, and he's just yelling. And then I hear him say, "It's hot water." But that was such a solid piece of advice, because I was like, "Oh snap! I can just go turn that valve off, the cold water feed line to the water heater."
Yep.
Sure enough, I knew where the water heater was, so I found it and turned that off, and that stopped it.
Nice.
Now, if it had been the cold water line. His house is it's a contemporary, so it's the funky lines, and it's got a weird kind of layout, multi-level.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know it wasn't. And I was looking all around the garage, and the garage has insulation on the in between the floor joists.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can't really see a whole lot. So I'm thinking maybe it's like hidden up in here and all this stuff. Anyways, once we got it turned off, we investigated, and I was like, I bet I know where it is. And then, of course, I found it. I was like, now you know. Now you know where
you got to know where it is.
So I can't stress that enough. Look,
New
guys,
house, know how. You got to listen.
New house, know how. I don't know which episode was that.
That's 1 through 14, one of those.
One of the early ones.
Okay, because one of our main points was you have to know where this water shutoff is, because if you don't, you're going to have an emergency.
It's going to be a bad day.
And Mike said after we got turned off, he was like, bro, I'm so glad you were here.
Yeah.
Because had he been there
He'd
working,
still be looking for it.
had he been there by himself,
Yeah, it's just like running, and he's running trying to find it.
I don't know how many gallons per minute that is, but it's got to be
More than you need on
insane.
your floors. Yeah.
Anyway, so
That's good, man.
the topic for today is about water, so I thought I would, since that just happened, say that. So stop what you're doing today, or whenever you get home.
Stop driving and
and go make sure that you know where that water shutoff is. So we're not talking about at the meter in your yard or whatever, at the water meter. We're talking inside the house. When the main water line comes inside your house, there should be a shutoff valve, and you need to know where that is.
And just hope and pray it's in an accessible spot. Mine is not. It's in the back side of the crawl space. So you got to run outside, open up the crawl space, get in there, crawl to the other side of the house. Ugh, it's a pain.
Well, in your circumstance, it would probably be easier to actually turn it off at the meter.
It probably would.
In your yard, provided you have that tool.
Which I do not.
Or have a plumber install an additional.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. Right where it comes in the house.
Yeah.
Anyway, so today's topic, smarter than water. This is really about keeping water outside of your house. So to keep water super destructive. It's one of the most destructive forces that try to get at your house. So we're going to be working through a few segments here. Tim's going to start off kind of with the base level grading of your yard and your property to keep water runoff going the right direction. Dave's going to be talking about gutters and downspouts, and I'll kind of finish up with some exterior drainage related to driveways or patios, and also roof penetrations, which is where things go through your roof, whether it's a chimney or plumbing vents or bathroom vents, anything like that.
Or areas that are commonly prone to leak.
Yes, valleys, things.
Where flashing goes bad.
Yep.
So we chose to title this episode Smarter Than Water. I've got my brother is in the crawl space encapsulation business, or if you have water in your basement, he fixes that. Anyways, when he was starting his business, I remember him saying that he talked to another colleague, and the colleague was like, "You just got to be smarter than the water." And it's a good point. I mean, essentially, that's what you're doing.
That's what it comes down to.
That's what it comes down to. Everything we're talking about is you have to be smarter than the water, meaning just think about where this water is going to go and what are the chances it's going to go in my house, and how can I prevent that?
Yep. Water is affected by gravity and pretty much resistance, whatever is going to get in its way. And not many things get in the way of water if it has a good flow behind it. So we'll be talking about how to keep that away from your house.
Yeah. So number one thing, you've got to make sure that you have proper grading. When we moved into our house, and actually, so we record in my basement, right? There's this area literally 6 feet away from where we're sitting now, that when we first moved into our house, when it would rain, water would literally pour in to this hole in the foundation wall.
That's bad news.
It's like a little waterfall.
Like water would come literally into this basement.
Yes.
When it would rain.
Yes.
Wow.
And they hadn't used the basement in years. There's an elderly lady that lived here, and it was basically, the basement had not been used. So who knows? They just left it, I don't know.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly, right? Well, I was planning on using the basement, so I was like, I got to figure this out. Sure enough, you go outside the house where the leak is, and it all dips down next to the house. And in fact, somebody down the line had poured concrete into this hole that was kind of right up next to the foundation in an attempt to stop the water. Mm-hmm. Never, ever, ever do that, because it will actually create worse problems for you in the long run, because it's going to create a washout under that concrete, and then you're not even going to know where the hole is. You see what I mean?
Yeah, water's going to find a way against the weak spot, which when you put concrete in a hole, it just goes around the concrete.
Exactly. Yeah, so the problem was a comprehensive grading, meaning like that entire front part of the house needed to be completely regraded because
when we talk, and again, we're speaking to all levels of audience here. When we say grading, we mean the slope of the earth.
Yes.
Around the property.
Yeah, so in general, the dirt needs to slope away from your house. You don't want to slope going into your house, which it sounded like Tim had. So right when the dirt got to his house, it dipped down toward the house, which would divert water
into it.
Toward and into the house.
Well, in our case, it was, yes, it did dip down like right before the house, but it was more of like even starting 10 feet
just kind of gradual toward the house?
Yeah, so, and I think a lot of people, they know that they might have a grading issue, but they don't want to tackle it because they have a bunch of landscaping in place, right? And they don't really want to investigate it because they have all this nice landscaping, they've got all this mulch and whatever, and so like, I'll just try to figure it out from the inside, and I'll like waterproof my basement wall. Your problem's with the grading, right? So you have to take the time. If that means literally ripping out your landscaping, that's what we had to do.
It's got to happen.
There was all these, this fairly nice stuff that the previous owner had, very mature landscaping, and we had to rip all of that out.
So what did you end up doing? Did you end up bringing in dirt and actually building up the grade in front of your house?
Dirt just got moved around. Okay. So I hired a guy, Bobcat guy, and he basically... just did regrading. I mean, it's hard to explain, what he did without showing a picture or something like that.
He just made the dirt slope away from the house.
And I was going to mention too, I had probably the largest, this was before my brother was in the business. I don't even know if he would have tackled something like this anyways, because he does more like crawl space encapsulation. Anyhow, one of like the biggest companies in Atlanta that does basement waterproofing. I had them come out because I was a new homeowner. I didn't know what I was doing. And they gave me some ridiculous quote. Quote. I was like, I'm not doing that. Right. And so I just called around, and a friend of mine recommended another guy, Bobcat guy. Call him up. Okay. So my first quote from the big company was like over $2,000 something. And then I called up a Bobcat guy. He's like, yeah, I'll come out and do that for like $275. And I was like, sold. And he turned out he was just in a very, very slow time. The economy was down. He's like, man, I hadn't run my machine in 2 weeks. So that's why he's willing.
He's like, you're doing me a favor.
That's why he was willing to do it for super cheap, because he's probably got to pay that rent on that machine or whatever. So, yeah, and that completely fixed the issue. Just creating a positive, or negative, I guess you could say, grade away from the house is a game changer. So if you've got issues coming in your crawl space or your basement, 9 times out of 10 that is a grading issue. You don't need to be looking into all these kind of French drain systems. Like, you may need that. You may actually need that. But step one is grading. You've got to get in there and figure out your grading situation. And keep in mind, too, that just when you're looking at a grade, it may be running towards your house and it may not look like it is.
No.
Right? So it only takes a couple of degrees towards your house to create a problem.
Yeah, and you can look online on YouTube, absolutely, to find ways to measure your grade to see how much of a drop there is or there isn't toward or away from your house. There's some good just calculators and ways to measure so you can see, is my lot even sloped away from my actual building?
Right. I've heard it said that you want your house to look like it's sitting on the back of a turtle.
That's ideal.
That's ideal because you want that water to be running away from the house.
Yep. And not all situations are like that. You may live down in a valley, but there should be at least around 10 to 20 feet around your house. There should be some grading away from your building. Yeah.
Let me mention too, one other thing isn't necessarily grading, but it has to do with up next to your foundation is chipmunks. Okay. So if you live in the South, I don't know if they have this problem in the North as well, but around here, we've got a pretty bad chipmunk problem. Yeah. They're super cute, but I hate them because they dig holes literally right up next to my foundation.
I got them all around. I got them all around my house.
Yeah, and oftentimes if you have landscaping and you've got mulch or pine straw or whatever kind of mulch you use, you won't notice the holes, until you go and maybe you're raking or something like that, And I've found several holes right up next to the foundation wall, and it's the frickin' chipmunk.
What are you doing with those holes? You just filling them in?
The
Yeah, but they'll dig them back out.
the problem with those
Punks.
is those can actually direct water up against your foundation. So mouse traps, if that's too inhumane, then find another way. But I've used mouse traps to grab chipmunks before.
No, you gotta,
There's so many. I see they're everywhere. You can't get enough.
If they weren't, it's funny because a lot of people say they hate the squirrels. Right?
I like the squirrels.
I don't mind the squirrels because the squirrels don't do anything to me.
Yeah.
But the chipmunks do. A couple years back, I did break their life cycle. I say I broke their life cycle.
Jeez, that sounds rather.
I went on a killing
drastic.
spree. I had to, man.
What'd you do?
Pellet gun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got out there with a pellet gun.
It was funny. I was in a text thread with another friend of mine. I would send him my kill shots. I know that sounds horrible, and I love the chipmunks, man. They're super cute. But look,
you can't be digging holes around my house.
You can't do it. If you're gonna do it, you're gonna die. Sorry, it's brutal.
That's the way it is. All right.
I did do. Sorry to cut you off, Josh. I did do mouse traps. But I stopped doing that because I caught a bird in one.
Whoa.
I was like, oh, that sucks. So I stopped doing that. Anyways, okay, moving on.
So the one of the next most intrusive or common problems for water into the house, and again, if you have a basement, this is especially noticeable, is your downspout situation. So Dave's going to walk us through a little bit of that.
A little bit. I mean, and you guys can chime in here because I don't have a ton on it, but obviously downspouts and gutters are very important. You got to keep them clean, of course. I got to keep leaves out of there. I am in a constant battle because I have trees all over my house of cleaning out my gutters in the fall, in the spring, in the summer. There's always stuff in there. But something that I noticed the other day, and I don't really do this often. I was walking around my house like pulling weeds and stuff. And there's a downspout comes down the house, down the side of the house, and then it turns at the bottom, right, and shoots out away from the house to direct water away. Well, that almost a 90 degree elbow had popped off the bottom of the downspout, and underneath, so the downspouts just pointed straight down at the ground, right at the corner of the house, and it's just like a full on hole, like down underneath my house. I don't know how long that water had just been like.
I mean, if it was a really heavy rain, that could have happened in one rain.
It could have, but I mean so it kind of. I want to highlight the importance of walk around your house once a month, something like that, just to kind of check everything out because I had no idea this was going on.
Yeah,
and it's obviously very destructive.
Yeah. Speaking of walking around, I just had written that note down. When it rains.
Yep.
Force yourself outside with an umbrella and walk around your house. I do it, especially when we're having hard downpours because I've had water issues here and there. I will just get out there with my umbrella and just take note of what is happening, where the water is moving. That is absolutely the best way to see what the water situation is around your property.
I've totally done that multiple times.
Yeah,
I've never done that. I had a friend who bought. Do you remember that event we had back in 2009? It was actually a 750-year event. He was buying a house like days before that happened, and so he went out to his house that day while it was just pouring to like get in the crawl space to see. Yeah. I mean, I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But anyway.
Yeah, and your situation with the downspout, that's super common, especially with basements. Kind of similar to Tim's issue. My grandmother had an old ranch that had a downspout on the corner that was in the back that no one ever went to or saw. And it was just blasting straight down against the foundation and into the basement. And it just that corner of the basement was always wet and no one knew why. And she had a waterproofing company come out and say, we'll do this and that and this and that. It was just the downspout. Just get that water pointed away from the house.
Yeah, I think obviously these are no-brainers, right? These are just very, very simple things. But what we're trying to do is to get you guys to actually think about it. It's a reminder. Go walk around your house when it's raining. Check all your downspouts.
It's something that's very simple to fix.
Yeah, if you have water in your basement or in your house and you hire someone to come in to help with the problem, if they immediately start talking about what they're going to do on the inside of the house, you need to ask them to leave. If only good contractors will talk about, well, let's look around the outside of the house and see if we can fix the outside first without being intrusive or having to do anything to the inside, because you're not going to. It's putting a Band-Aid on it if you're just fixing water from the inside. It doesn't work long term.
The waterproofing, because I've done that. I have a block wall foundation, so I have done the waterproofing on the inside. Sure. But honestly, it's really just more of like a humidity. Like it just really kind of knocks down the humidity.
Yep.
If you've got an actual serious water issue, it'll force that stuff right off of there.
Yeah.
There's a couple spots in my basement where I always mispronounce this, like the minerals in the water like start pushing the paint off. Efflorescence. Yeah, something like that. So I still got some issues with that, but it was built in 1964. Block wall foundation. I'm like, why did they build these things like this?
Yeah.
A porous material. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's just bury this. It'll probably be just fine.
Yeah.
Really? Like.
Yep. And then with cinder block walls, also hydrostatic pressure can build up. If you get water built up enough behind one of these walls, it can cave it in. I mean, it can totally just push the wall inside, and you'll see those with the horizontal cracks in the cement block walls.
Yeah, you do not want to be paying that bill because they're going to come in and have to do this crazy structural. I mean, they're going to have
to excavate from the outside.
Yeah, they've got systems in place now where you can solve that problem. It's not like a massive deal, but that bill's going to be massive.
Right. So, Dave, anything else with
the only other thing that the only other thing I would say is just if you don't want to get up on I was going to say you need to inspect your gutters, because when I bought my house, it was newly painted and we had kind of a sketchy contractor who flipped it. And they repainted the house. They painted the gutters, and they painted the bottom of the gutter. They looked great. But when I got up on the roof, there was so much stuff like packed into the gutter that it had eaten away at the material. There are actually holes in the gutter. So it's something you need to kind of keep an eye on and inspect every once in a while.
All right. So last thing on gutters, some houses don't have gutters. You may have moved into a house
I grew up in didn't have gutters.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So no gutters on the house. It's more than a good to have. It's a great to have. It's going to keep water from sheeting straight down against your foundation, tearing up the landscape, getting into your basement. So and it's one of those things that's not as expensive as it may seem for simple houses. I think
Yeah, if you've got a house that just has the four sides, right? You don't have a bunch of crazy roof lines. Yeah. It's going to be very straightforward and pretty cheap. When you just said that, you were like, some people don't have gutters. It made me think of that the beauty pageant chick. Remember a couple years back, and she's like, "You don't remember this?"
Yeah.
No, some people don't have maps. Come on,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think she was from South Carolina.
I don't watch the beauty pageants, so
she just got freaked out and
such as
some people don't have maps.
Wow.
Anyways, sorry if that fell on deaf ears there.
It did on me, but
sorry. So and the expense is gonna save you a lot of headache down the road. Water, super destructive.
One other quick note about gutters: if you are thinking, if you don't have gutters at all, or if your gutters are in rough shape, go ahead and upgrade to larger gutters, because the bigger gutters are going to be way better. So if aesthetically that looks fine to upgrade to a larger size gutter, then I would strongly suggest doing that. I just did that on my house about a year ago. We upgraded from, I guess it was 4-inch gutters to 5-inch.
Yeah, when
gutters.
we were preparing for the show, Tim was like, he was talking to me. He's like, "Oh, do you have the small gutters or the large ones?" I was like, I don't know. Probably the small ones. But larger gutters are going to allow for more flow, more water getting away from your house. Good thing to have.
Cool. So a couple more things on water control here. We're going to talk about driveway drains. I put in the landscape around my house. I kind of have a sloped driveway that slopes down towards the house, and then it slopes back up again before it finally gets to the house, which means the driveway has a little valley in it.
A little valley, but slopes back up to keep water from getting into your garage.
Yeah. If you have a driveway that slopes, and I've seen it like straight downhill, straight down into your garage, you will have water issues if you don't have a driveway drain. So with this little valley in my yard, and I need some additional grading work, but this little valley would basically catch water. So it wouldn't be up against the house, which was good, but it would sit in the driveway until it dried up. And I didn't like that, because getting out of my car or whatever, I had to walk up and down the driveway, get wet, walking through this puddle. So I installed a drain at the left side of my driveway that basically allowed all that water to drain out. And I ran that drain underground, dug a trench through the front of my yard, further downhill, and it discharges further downhill in the grass.
We dug that by hand, right?
Did.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
I know your yard. How long was that drain? How long was the pipe?
It was probably a 70, 80 foot run.
Woo!
Yeah.
You dug that by
We
hand?
hand dug
Well,
that, both of us.
I came and helped. I don't think that I was there for the entire thing, was I?
No, but probably a good portion of it.
Digging a trench, man, that is a lot of work.
In the, you can, man. Note, go ahead and rent the trencher.
Just do it.
Yeah, rent the machine that's designed for that, and it'll be worth
ask
it.
around. Like we always say, if you're going to rent some big thing, ask around to your buddies, and then you can go in together
Yes.
and share that
Maybe
because
someone
somebody
else
else has got a downspout that they need to make a long run for, and you can rent the trenching machine and do that.
You
a
will
lot
you
easier.
will die without it, because I've almost when I was a kid, I was over at my friend's house and his dad had us digging a trench through the yard, and I was like, I'm gonna die today.
It's real work.
with a shovel.
Real
It's
work.
rough.
So the driveway drain that helped eliminate that helped move standing water. That was one situation. The other situation that I was talking about earlier is if you have a driveway that kind of slopes straight down almost into your garage. At that or before the threshold of your garage, they make drains specifically for driveways that can be driven over by cars. Take a look on YouTube, see how involved it is. It's going to involve cutting the concrete. For the extremely handy guy, you may be able to rent these tools yourself and install it yourself. Otherwise, this may be something you need to pay for, but again, well worth it. Better than water flowing straight down your driveway into your garage that could flow into your crawl space or into your basement. Again, the object is to get water away from your house.
And they do make. I remember when you did that flip house, you bought a garage door threshold. You were having some issue with water coming in. So as a temporary measure, they do make these large, like I guess rubber or something threshold things that will block water.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what you would see on an exterior door of your house, just kind of a rubber threshold that the garage door can come shut down on top of to create a seal. That's a good situation if maybe during a heavy driving rain you're getting water into your garage and it's just kind of an annoyance. You can use that to kind of just temporarily stem water flow that way. So
let's talk about. You were going to talk about roof issues now. Yeah.
Last thing here is water getting in through the top of your house is not uncommon. We've been talking a lot about basements and runoff and downspouts, but sometimes around chimneys, very often due to poor flashing in your roof or just a poor roof install, around chimneys, water can get in around, like I said, plumbing stacks or plumbing vents that go through, or if you have a bath fan that vents through the attic, anything that penetrates the roof and goes through your roof decking and through the shingles is an opportunity for water to get in. So if those aren't sealed well or flashed properly, get a professional or, again, look it up. It may be something you can do yourself, but those are all common things. If you see the brown spot on your ceiling grow over time, you've got water coming into your roof. Check those out. Check those roof penetrations out. I think we've touched on kind of the major ways that water are going to get into your house.
You mentioned the chimney. That is such a common place where water gets in. Or the roof line comes down and hits where the chimney is coming up through the roof line. And if that flashing is not done right, that's where you're most definitely going to have a leak. I was just going to mention, if you're looking at houses to buy, always look there. Always look there, because that is the most common area where you're going to have water intrusion and your roof is going to be compromised there.
Yeah, and again, to tie on one more thing to that is when you're getting your home inspected, it may be of a benefit to pay $100, $150 to a roofer if you have any concerns about the condition of the roof or these penetrations, for a roofing contractor to come take a look. Now, it needs to be a reputable guy who's not just going to try to sell you something, but someone who can actually come take an honest assessment of the condition of the roof and give you a fair evaluation beyond what the home inspector can give you. Because a lot of home inspectors, in their contracts, they're not even required to climb up onto the roof. They're allowed to just do a visual inspection. If they can see the roof from the ground, they're allowed to just do a visual inspection. That probably depends on the state you're in. But anyway, just a side note on that, if you have any questions on your roof.
Having that done is a great idea. It might save you from having to put your dog down.
Whoa.
In my case,
That
all right,
came out of the blue.
it did. But look, I had a roof leak. Okay. I got up on the roof. I put a tarp on the roof to keep the water from coming in. And a roofer drove by. He saw it. He's driving around the neighborhood. A roofer sees it, comes and knocks on my door. And is like, hey, I'd love to take a look and give you a price to fix it. I was like, you're standing on my doorstep. Okay, we'll do this. So he gets up on the roof, comes back inside. My dog bites him, right? The dog bites the roofer. We ended up having to put him down.
Wow.
It's a little bit longer story than that, but essentially the dog bit the roofer. And then we had to put him down. Super sad.
Did you end up giving the roofer the work?
No, I did not.
Whoa, savage.
Yeah, I was like, I just hope he doesn't,
Doesn't come back for the money.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that could have been a bad homeowner.
All right, guys. So UCAN listeners, remember, if you're not smarter than water, you might have to put your dog down.
Oh,
it's very sad.
Man,
all right?
That's a
so don't let that happen to you.
dangerous tale.
Okay, so we've talked about several issues that you're going to have with water getting into your house. Bottom line, be smarter than the water. You got to figure out where this water's flowing, where it's going to be getting into your house. And so we've gone over a lot of just really common sense things as a way to remind you guys to be proactive, get out there, look at the grade that's around your house, look at your downspouts, look at any kind of roof issues. If you've got standing water in your driveway, hey, dig a trench like Josh did and install a drain. So just be proactive about that, because if you got any kind of leak, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and most of the things we've talked about actually don't involve that much cost. A lot of these things are remediation that can either be done for free or for very low investment, versus waiting until you have a major problem and having to spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to fix a water issue in your basement.
Of course. All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and I believe Josh has got the segment for us this week. So stick around and listen to what Josh has to say.
This episode is sponsored by 1776 United. 1776 United is a patriotic and historically inspired lifestyle brand. They make the best patriotic shirts and apparel on the market today. I personally own many of their products, and if you want to don patriotic gear without looking gaudy, check them out on Instagram, Facebook, and at 1776united.com.
All right, guys, welcome back. Josh, what you got for us?
Yeah, so I'm going to do another, informational nerd out a little bit on something specific that interests me. So I hope at least some of our listeners, and maybe even one of you two, will find this interesting. So there you go. That's how it feels. So
wake up.
So we're gonna talk a little bit or all about why we have time zones.
Ooh, okay.
Like the sun, the earth revolves around the sun, the earth spins.
What? Really?
Yeah. So why
flat earth.
You're flat earth, Dave?
Totally.
So if you believe in that concept,
I'm not a flat earther, by the way.
If you believe in that concept of the heliocentric universe here, solar system.
Okay.
If you're into that, then you deal with clocks, you deal with time. So why do we have these time zones? Why don't we just kind of all do our own thing? Does anyone know ultimately why time zones were even created?
Why they were created for... I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a short answer. I mean,
it's pretty short, actually.
Yeah, I feel like it's like one event.
Short.
Like is it an event? Is it like the Olympics?
It's shockingly short.
I mean, I would say it has something to do with travel or...
Oh, Tim's got it.
Yeah. Because you can't keep things straight.
Everyone was traveling to the Olympics. So they had...
So that is the ultimate answer. It has to, and this is why it was interesting to me, is it wasn't that long ago. Like time zones.
So air was an air travel thing.
It's a railroad travel.
Oh, okay.
Thing. So anyway, before clocks were invented, every little town had its own sundial, and they just went off of solar time. And so one city over that's an hour away, if you traveled there, could be off by like 20 minutes, like by actual solar time. So not a big deal when you just hang out in your town, or when it takes like days to travel to the next state or major city. Not a big issue. But when trains came around, it became an issue because you've traveled so fast that nobody knew when the train was going to arrive. Is that local time? Is that, how do we figure that out?
Did they know before they had the trains, did they know this is going to become an issue? Or did they get on the train and were they like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here?
Yeah, it was,
they had to have known before.
I don't think they knew before. I think it kind of all came about at the same time. Like, hey, trains are awesome. And
do you know if the telegraph or the train came first?
I do. I have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So basically railway time, this was the first like time standardization, was called railway time. England gets credit. Great Britain gets credit for this. Their railway system started using it in 1840. So pre-Civil War, Civil War in the U.S., Great Britain starts using railway time. So they basically have the time that the trains run on. So the local cities would still have their own time, not even with time zones, just their own local time. Then they would also have clocks that were specific to the railroad. Some towns even had their main clock tower would have the local time on it and then an additional minute hand, which was the railroad time.
Wow.
So they knew what time the trains were coming in on. So, and one cool thing is on longer journeys, the trains would have, and stagecoaches, this was early, by horse, they would have basically a conversion. Like if your trip takes this long or this many days, you need to like back the minutes up to adjust your own pocket watch.
I would have been so not on board with train travel if I'd lived back, because I'd have been like, I'm not dealing with this time change thing.
A lot of folks weren't, interestingly enough. So Morse code, basically the guy credited with the telegraph, this was 1837. He did that, which was 3 years before railway time came on. In 1852, so 12 years later, they finally started connecting, I guess, cities with the telegraph, so they could tell each other the time, tell each other the local time, or the railway time, to keep it like perfectly in sync. By 1855, 98% of towns in Great Britain had adopted railway time. In the United States, we started using railway time in about 1853 after two trains collided head on because of a time issue. So it happened in New England. 14 passengers died. They were like, okay, we got to get this figured out. So a few years after Great Britain had started doing it, America started doing it.
Question for you real quick.
Yeah.
I don't want to derail you, but
nice.
So this back then they had mechanical timepieces, right? So you wind them up.
Yep.
And these watches, these pocket watches or whatever, are notoriously inaccurate. Mm-hmm. So over a day's time, they could lose a minute or several minutes in some cases. So I'm just curious, like how did they standardize everything?
So that was where kind of the telegraph came in, because it could keep, like when you got to your next town, that had the railway time, and you could reset your watch. Chronographs, I could go into that whole thing. They play a big role in this, but it's kind of actually over my head. But ships had chronographs to keep their internal time. They could look at the stars and figure out what time it was and how long it was taking them and all that kind of stuff. So one guy named Charles F. Dowd in 1870, he proposed a system of national times for railroads, which involved the single time for all railways while keeping times for local towns. So this was kind of his version of what Great Britain was already doing. All the railroad companies eventually got on board by 1883. A lot of smaller towns were opposed to it, like Dave was saying. They're like, why do we need to adopt this whole railway time?
I've been doing it this way for this many years.
Yeah, and it's the people would have to, quote, eat, sleep, work, and marry by railway time. So, what are we doing here? Our whole lives are going to be orchestrated by the railway time and not the solar time. So, long story short, there was an international meridian conference in Washington, D.C. in 1884 that adopted to set the first version of time zones based on Greenwich Mean Time, because that was where the first people that wanted standardized time were, and so they kind of won that thing. By 1918, standard time in terms of time zones was established in the U.S. Russia, fun fact, August 1st, 2018, Russia still had separate railway time from the regular time. So they're
doing their own thing
Russia.
for.
Yep. So from that point on, each station finally was able to like use its own local time zone time.
So have we always had 4 time zones in the contiguous U.S.?
They've I think they've evolved over time. We've had more and less.
Okay.
Not even sure how many we have today, but it hasn't always been the same.
I'm glad we figured it out because I'll be watching, like the Braves, go Braves, play the Mets or something. And, it's a little bit farther east in New York if they're in New York and it's dark there. And I'm like, it's not dark here. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. What's crazy, real quick, I was just in Montana. The sun, it doesn't get dark till like 10:30 there crazy. At night. And then the sun, it starts getting light at like 5 a.m. right now. And so it's a long day.
But a very depressing winter.
Very depressing winter. Starts snowing in September. Can get down to -30. It just melted like 3 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's snowbound for a while. And so that's railway time. And I'll end with two things about railway time and society. People were nervous about this new railway time thing. So in 1844, William Wordsworth, he was protesting the building of one of these railways. And he said, quote, "Is there no nook of English ground secure from rash assault?" Because he was concerned about the loss of timeless isolation and individuality of all these these towns. He was afraid of all these towns becoming linked up.
Hey, man, there's something to that.
One organism,
right?
So just interesting to see that. And then Charles Dickens also expressed concern several times.
Never heard of him.
His quote was, "There was even railway time observed in clocks, as if the sun itself had given in."
Goodness.
So this was it was a major issue, but I think in the end,
it's the way to go. You can't fight progress, right?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I guess the people, they had to go along with it because look, this is having to do with commerce. You want to make money, you want to progress,
you got to do it.
You got to jump on board with it.
Yep.
So
quit looking at the sundial. All right, get yourself a watch and set it to railroad time.
Get on board.
All right, super interesting. I never even knew about the railroad time thing. So
good catch.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
That was a good segment.
All right,
guys. We've been saying it for the past couple of weeks, I think, on the episodes. We want to make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel, okay? And also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Check out our show notes at youcanman.com. And I think we're getting closer to launching a Facebook group. And so, but there's other ways that you can get in touch with us. I mean, you can leave us a message on our Facebook page now. And then also we want to remind everybody that we're going to be doing an ongoing segment or show on Ask Us Anything. So if you have questions that you want us to answer on the show, I've got a couple of you guys that will like text me stuff. And we're going to get to that for sure. But you can email me or go on our Facebook page or Instagram and leave us a message. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.